Welcome to Caught Off Guard. I'm Jessie Zarelli, and this is a show about the moments that hit us out of nowhere and where that's usually where life gets a little interesting. Each episode, we dive into the gut decisions, chaos, intuition, and curveballs that end up rerouting us, often more authentically than any grand plan we had. You'll hear from a range of people who have all been caught off guard in their own way and how those moments pushed them somewhere they didn't expect but ultimately needed to go. Okay, now let's get started.
I've tried to record this intro a couple of times, and as you can hear from my voice, I am not feeling all that well, although I don't have that many pain symptoms, but clearly my body is fighting something. And because of that, I am also feeling a little more subdued with my energy. I'm not feeling quite as, I don't know what the word is for that, but I'm not feeling that. And I started to record, and then I felt frustrated, like I wasn't acting the way I think I should be acting. And then after doing that to myself 3 times, I realized this is the way I feel. And I've pushed this off because I was hoping my voice would get better. And I have a schedule I want to stick to, and it's not. So this is what it is. Like, I have to just roll with it. And maybe my energy is a little different, but that's okay. We're just working with it. When I started this podcast, I had no idea all of the lessons it was going to teach me about life. And I feel like it has been kind of endless in a really, really good way of forcing myself to show up when I'm not in the mood, forcing myself to stick to this schedule, even if I want to adjust it, which I actually did adjust something, which I'll explain in a moment. And then a lot of letting go of perfection and what my expectations are and what I think they need to be for this podcast. And then kind of letting myself just let that go and let it evolve and let it see what comes up. It's really just letting go of a lot of control and kind of trusting, which, to be honest, is what most of this episode is about. As I'm diving into the artist way, those were kind of the biggest things I got to uncover for myself. So in terms of the scheduling that has changed, obviously, what I had set out to do was a solo episode and then an interview and going back and forth in that way. But I didn't want to wait any longer to do this solo episode about the artist's way. I finished the book about a week ago, and while everything feels fresh and it's still percolating, I wanted to do this episode instead of having it be nearly a month later. And I have, an interview that I had recorded that I've been editing and getting ready to put out, and something about it didn't feel right. Like, it didn't feel like the right time. And I knew it's because I really wanted to share about the artist's way. And so I went back and forth with, this is the schedule you set, like, stick to it. And then I realized that constricting it that way was really coming from a place of fear, that if I adjusted the schedule and I didn't stick to the plan, that it like meant something bad about me, rather than, no, I'm going along and just adjusting in the moment and I'm still showing up and doing the thing. I'm just doing it a little bit differently. So yeah, there have been a lot of lessons coming from this. I also realized that I'm wearing orange when I recorded the episode as well. I had to balance it out with the green behind me. Anyway, okay, I want to share a couple of interesting products that I have discovered since my last episode. I actually may have talked about one of these, which is skincare, beauty care, and makeup have been on my mind a lot lately. I've really been thinking about the products I use, and that is stemming from a lot of this energy clearing work that I've been doing. I had gone up to this metaphysical used bookstore in Kingston called Spiral Mirrors maybe a month ago. And they do workshops once a month on the 12 laws of the universe. And the first one I went to was on the law of rhythm. And then the second one I went up to this past Friday was on the law of gender. And I wasn't going to go initially, but then I felt like, I actually really do want to bring more like femininity and flow into my life. And I kind of want to let go of all this like go, go, go masculine energy. So maybe I'll check it out, which is also really funny that I've gotten sick too, right? Because I feel like it goes hand in hand of not being go, go, go and being forced to slow down a little bit. But anyway, with doing all of this kind of energy clearing and excavating, I've been reflecting a lot on my day-to-day habits and patterns and the things I turn to or use that maybe I'm not really thinking about. And one thing that's coming up for me again and again is beauty and skincare products. I have very sensitive skin, so I feel like if a product is not right for me, it reveals itself within a few weeks to a month, and I might not know right away. So sometimes, I'll get a tester of something or I'll borrow something from someone for a few days and it seems great. And then I'll go buy it. But then I'll realize about a month in that my skin is not taking to it. And sometimes I just forget that, right? There's just a lot of things to remember in life. But I feel like my body tells me when a product doesn't feel right because when I go to grab it or put it on, it feels like low vibe, which I know I'm probably not articulating this in a way that's as easy to understand. But it's like if you ever go to eat something or reach for something and you're not thinking about it, but maybe there's a small part of you that doesn't really like it, that's kind of what I'm talking about. It's not an outward like, ugh, oh my God, I hate that. I'm putting this face cream on. It's more like I'm putting it on and I'm not enjoying it. Maybe I don't really like the smell. I don't like the packaging, or I'm annoyed that I have to go get another one because I ran out. It's things like that, like a little more subtle. And I've been feeling that about a lot of the makeup I've been using. I think it's really easy to start to add in more makeup without realizing because you adjust to the new look that you have, right? It's like when you get a haircut right away, you might not like your new look, but then a few days or a week later, you love it and then you can't imagine going back. It's the same with makeup, right? You're doing it every single day. So I ran out of mascara about a month ago, and I've worn mascara every single day for probably the past few years, with few exceptions in there. And I didn't run out and get a new mascara because I haven't liked any of the brands that I've been using. Also, with traditional mascara, you are supposed to throw it out every 3 months. I guess a lot of people don't know that, but I've learned that from different makeup artists. I've just had my makeup done a million times, and I always ask lots and lots of questions about, what's the new information? What product should I use? What are the new tools? What's the what's in, what's out? I'm always asking lots of questions when I'm getting my makeup done. And for cleanliness purposes, you're supposed to get rid of mascara after a few months because of bacteria that could be in it. And so I've always been aware of that, which means I never want to spend that much money on mascara because it's only lasting for max 3 months. But if you're not using a good brand, it can get really clumpy. Sometimes I feel like my eyes are also really sensitive and I have to rub my eyes a lot. So anyway, I decided to just give my eyes a little bit of a break. And then I started doing the minimal makeup for a few days. And I thought, oh, I actually don't look that bad. I just got so used to having makeup on, which I've never been one who wears a lot of makeup. Like I don't really ever wear foundation. So there's not that much on my skin. And then my friend changed my world by telling me about this beauty company called Living Libations. They're based out of Canada, and when I tell you this makeup and skincare is changing my life, I am not exaggerating. I am not exaggerating. They have everything from oral dental care, hair care, essential oils, perfume, skincare, body lotions and serums. And then they also have really, really nice makeup. And they consider their makeup to also be skincare because of its antibacterial, fungal properties, right? It's just very good for your skin. It's not like you're putting this thing on and then you have to heal the skin afterwards to take into consideration the makeup you're wearing. It's very healing and soothing as it goes on. So yeah, over the last couple of weeks, I've pretty much switched to that. I haven't been wearing any mascara. I've been slowly throwing out some of my makeup that's just been sitting there for years. I've wanted to wear all natural makeup for probably all of my adulthood, but honestly, the technology was just really not there. Products nowadays are so much better than they were 10, even 15 years ago. I remember being in high school and college and trying to use these natural brands, and they were either just really cakey or really oily, and they would melt very easily or they were sticky. Now the products are so much better. They're on par with chemical filled chemical filled products. I won't say the brands, but so anyway, so I switched to those and I feel so good. My skin feels really nice. I feel really beautiful. It also, I can see like how it feels very high vibe. Every time I go to reach for the jar, which is glass, which I also love, and I put the makeup on, it feels really nice. I'm using my fingers now. You could get brushes if you want, but I'm just kind of like dabbing it on. Basically, their big thing with their makeup is they come in these little pots. I wish I had one next to me, but it's essentially, if you're watching, it's essentially the size of an Apple Watch charger, like the little rounded bit. And you use like the teeniest amount and you can wear it on your lips. You could definitely do eyeshadow with some of the colors. You could put it on your cheeks to have like a little like blush shimmer color. And then the more or less you use, depends on your skin tone, the season, and how much makeup you want to wear. But it feels so nice putting on. They smell delightful. And I love supporting this company where everything is all natural. Also, the reviews on this website are fucking out of control. I just ordered some of the hair care serum. It's like a nettle based, I think it is, and then the toothpaste. The reviews on here on these products, people are saying this toothpaste changed my life. I had the beginning of a cavity. I used this toothpaste for 3 months. I went back and my dentist thought I got my cavity fixed. Like, it's crazy. So I'm very excited for these to change my life. They actually already have. I used this serum called Doodab, I think it's called. I had this teeny tiny bump on my nose that came out of nowhere probably a year ago, and my dermatologist had looked at it. There's no problems with it. It's just like your skin changes over time. I put it on. Within 1 week, the bump is almost completely gone. Like, I'm serious. I'm a real person telling you these products are wild. So I just applied to do to be like an affiliate with them and was accepted. So I will share any discount codes I can. But this is a brand that is 100% worth paying shipping for. And I don't really like to pay shipping, but for these ones I will. I am still using this company called Froya. It's this Norwegian skincare company, so I'm using that in the day and at night. It comes with a skin polish, night cream, day cream, eye cream, and then another cream for like redness or acne. And I really, really love their skincare. Okay, so that's probably enough information for skin and beauty care. And maybe I'll do a whole episode and I'll kind of break down why I'm using these products and what they mean to me and how they're changing my life. Anyway, so this episode is all about the artist's way. I think it would be beneficial for people who have never heard of the artist's way or done it, or people who have done it maybe a long time ago and you're thinking of, dipping your toes back in or giving it a whirl. I give a little breakdown of each chapter. I share my key takeaways, what stood out to me, what I loved about it, what I didn't like so much about it, and then tips if you're going to form your own tips if you're going to do the artist's way, which I kind of just gave it away. The main thing is I would highly recommend forming your own group. So I hope you enjoy and I hope you have a lot of takeaways. And then if you want to talk to me about the artist's way, please reach out. I have a lot more thoughts. I just couldn't fit this in. I didn't want to have like a 5-hour episode. The artist's way, like in the title, it's about living an artist's life. And so there really are endless takeaways and it pertains to so much more than your creativity and who you are as an artist. Having some technical issues, story of my life. And wardrobe issues. I had to change my shirt because I blended with the background, because it turns out when you like literally 2 colors, everything starts to look alike. I've done everything I can to make my voice better, just short of using an AI tool. I am the S word. It stands for SICK. I don't like to say it, but I am that. And I have not been that in a very, very long time. I'm a little salty about it. And I have delayed this as long as possible, hoping my voice got better. And this is what we're working with. I know this is not the pattern that I had initially set out, like the structure, which was solo episode interview, but I didn't want to wait 2 more weeks to talk about the artist's way. I finished about a week and a day ago. Yeah, just over a week ago. And while it's still fresh, I wanted to share this. So in this episode, I'm going to give you some information about the artist's way if you're unfamiliar. Hello, kitty cat. I'm going to give you a breakdown of each chapter, the tasks, some of the key takeaways. I'll share my opinions, what I liked and what I didn't like, dare I say, my biggest takeaways / benefits,
and then what I would recommend if you want to do the artist way. So let's get into it. The artist way, here she is, if you can see on video. I think this is one of the original covers. I had gotten this used years ago, and so I think this is an even older cover. It's got to be more than 10 years old. The Artist Way is a 12-week book written by Julia Cameron that guides you through a spiritual practice in order to connect more to your artistry. Every week involves a few different things you need to do. So, first of all, you need to read the actual chapter. Next, you have to complete any tasks that are at the end. You have to participate in an artist date once a week, which is really any type of creative outing. It can actually be at home too if you're doing some creative task, preferably done alone. And then you need to participate in the daily morning pages. Yes, which if you haven't heard of those, although a lot of people have, even if they don't know what the book is, they are 3 pages of a typical size notebook. I don't have mine here, but just like an 8.5 by 11 notebook, 3 pages, a stream of consciousness. The writing is not meant to be monumental. It is not meant to be contributing to any creative project. It's a brain dump. The purpose of the morning pages is to reveal any of the things that might be in the way of you accessing your creativity. So when you're writing these pages, eventually things are going to come up if they don't right away. And that might consist of any blocks that you have, which is a very common word she refers to in her book. You might experience anxieties, fear, people you're angry at or upset with, things that you're looping about or obsessing over, concerns in your life. You get that all out onto the page, and then it creates space in your brain to be creative. That is the whole idea. Some people have heard of the Artist's Way. Very few people, however, have completed the Artist's Way. And I absolutely understand why. I think I just said this, but I've had the book for 8 years and I've attempted to finish it twice. Once was right when I got the book around acting school or towards the end. And then another was during the pandemic. And that was weird. I was doing with someone remote because it was right when the pandemic began. And I'm not sure why, but I have memories of being on our FaceTime calls and sitting in my bathtub. I have no idea what was going on, but neither of us made it through. It's a lot to commit to. Both times, though, I stopped around chapter 3, which is very interesting. I guess that'll reveal some about me when I get to some information on that chapter. I think most people don't finish it because it really is a lot to commit to, especially with the daily morning pages. And I think if you are someone who is prone to perfectionist tendencies, if you skip a day or you don't have time and you can only do a little bit of the morning pages, that can build up for a lot of people. And because they're not doing it, quote unquote, perfectly, they want to dip out and not do it. Other people don't finish it because I think it can be somewhat triggering going through the tasks and reflecting. And that is not for the faint of heart. So I'll go through, I'll give some information about the topics covered and the things that stood out to me. I will say that there are some chapters that might be more challenging to others, and that's obviously going to be very personal. The things that I share that were more challenging for me or things that didn't resonate, you might have the complete opposite experience. Depends on your personality and what you're working through. Another hang up I have heard people have with the Artist's Way is her use of the word God. I am not triggered by this word, but I understand some people are, and they might not appreciate the spiritual aspect to this book. You can obviously replace the book with something that is more suitable to you. But I would imagine if you're not a spiritual person or you don't identify with any spirituality, then I would expect that a lot of the book is not going to resonate with you. That's totally okay. Some people can look past it and still get what they need, and others won't. Obviously, this is not meant for everyone. If I'm being honest, I think that was probably an issue of mine in the past, but now as someone who I would say is spiritual and is connected to my spirituality, I am not bothered by that. What's really interesting is that this book, I mean, really, like this applies to everything, right? This book is about so much more than your creativity. If you come in here and come into doing the book and you want to specifically work on like one project in your life, it's going to tackle way more than just that. It made me realize how being the actress I want to be and being the artist I want to be requires me to live an aligned life. And I get to define whatever alignment means to me, but I see how when I am living out of alignment and I'm not connected to myself or to something larger than me, accessing my creativity is much more of a challenge than if I didn't have those blocks. I can feel those blocks. They feel almost physical. It feels like there's a cage, although there's not. Wild. So there are a few ways I could structure this, but I think the best is, like I said, go into the background of each chapter and then kind of give my opinions at the end. So I'll try to curb those as I go through. I wrote a little bit of an outline, but I'm sure I'll go off. I do want you to, if you haven't heard of this book, kind of like form your own, opinion on it as you're listening. All right. So the reason I even started doing this is because we're going back to the beginning. I decided that I officially wanted to complete The Artist's Way back in November. So only a few months ago, November 2025. And I knew that that was not the right time. I was taking a pretty intense acting class that required a lot of my time. I was auditioning a lot, multiple times a week. I was on set quite a bit, and the holidays were coming up, so it wasn't right. I also felt very strongly about wanting to do this in a group of people. So I gave myself about a month to put the word out there, gather some names, and I got about 15 people who said that they were interested in being a part of this. Some people I knew and some people who were new and were introduced to me, which I love. We started in January. I think the 8th, after like the first full week of January. And then we met once a week on Sundays in the morning, every single week. Towards the end, I would say we probably have about 5 to 6 pretty consistent people who came in and out for most of the weeks or the majority of the weeks or stayed connected in some way. But that doesn't mean other people weren't doing it. It's very possible that some of the people who joined decided they wanted to do it on their own and they just wanted to know that other people were doing it at the same time as them. So set yourself up for success. I would say, purchase the book. I know you can get it from the library, but since it's a 12-week program, I think it's worth buying, and it's probably something you'll go through again. Get yourself a notebook. She recommends 8.5 by 11. I would do that as well. Like, keep things simple. Don't try to complicate them and reinvent the wheel. Just follow along. You can look up Julia Cameron and some of the information on her background. She's in the film world. She's directed for a very long time. So if you want to get more information about her, you can. She's also written many, many, many other books. She has a couple of books that are offshoots of The Artist's Way. They're, most of what I've seen, I think they're 6-week books. So it's like a continuation or an abridged version. And then she's written a ton of other books as well. In the first chapter, let's just start with week 1. So in week 1, it's on recovering a sense of safety. And in this chapter, you dive into your core negative beliefs. See, it starts pretty heavy, I think, if you're not used to this language too. They have you do a task on the negative beliefs that you have and then what the positive alternative is. And then you're given some creative affirmations. This week, I felt like, I remember thinking this was a very good week and it was a good start. It was heavy and it was strong, but it was a very, very good start and it felt like a good foundation. I personally didn't feel very overwhelmed by it, and I didn't feel like triggered like I wanted to run and hide either. A lot of these things were somewhat familiar to me. Some of the tasks are also really fun, like listing imaginary lives you would have if you were going to lead other lives. So for example, say you're a writer and you're feeling blocked and you're doing The Artist's Way, but maybe an alternative life for you would be being a mailman or a mailman. Oh my God, that's so gendered. A mail person or a meteorologist or a chef. something like that. I think I wrote like a history teacher and a psychologist, maybe something in the Peace Corps. That sounds familiar. Chapter 2 is on recovering a sense of identity. I really like this chapter because there was a section in it called Crazy Makers, and I feel like it helped me identify the people in my life who enjoy drama and suck the energy out of me. And then also I did some excavating of why I allowed that to happen, but it made me very aware of some of the dynamics in my life that I don't really want to participate anymore. She also talks about skeptics and skepticism and how we need to be careful of the people around us who essentially don't have the beliefs that we want to embody. So, for example, if you want to publish a novel and you have a couple of friends who are very blocked writers, sharing with them about your novel might not be a great idea because they might just share all of their anxieties and you'll take them on because you're in a more sensitive position. Moving on, week 3 is on recovering a sense of power. So maybe this gives you some insight into my psychology, but actually it really does because giving away my power has been a topic coming up a lot. I've been doing some like energy clearing and some workshops and it has been a theme. So I'll just out myself from the beginning. This chapter starts on anger and how anger is fuel in us and it's meant to be listened to. I think a lot of women can identify with experiencing anger and feeling like we should shut it down, like we're not supposed to be angry. We're supposed to be sweet little angels. Some of my favorite quotes from this chapter were, "Answered prayers are scary. They imply responsibility." I love this because I think it speaks to the truth of the fear we have in getting what we want, even though often we tell ourselves that we're afraid of failure, but I think it's the other way around. Another great quote was, "The universe will reward you for taking risks on its behalf." That is by Shakti Gawain. I got a lot from this chapter, and another piece that she goes on to talk about is how when we do get our prayers answered, we can sometimes be really quick to discount them and call it luck or anything but what it is, which is manifestation or whatever other word you want to use. But your prayer is being answered. You're getting what you want. Oh, and then she goes on to say, "We say we're scared by failure, but what frightens us more is the possibility of success. Take a small step in the direction of a dream and watch the synchronous doors flying open." I love that so much. In week 4, so we're headed to, a quarter of the way done, we move on to recovering a sense of integrity. And a lot of this chapter is on living in alignment. She has us get more honest with our morning pages and to try and work things out through the pages, work things out in the paper. By tossing out the old and unworkable, we make way for the new and suitable. She quotes Chekhov. If you want to work on your art, work on your life. That really stood out to me, and I have been repeating that quote in my head over and over and over again, how, and I said this at the beginning, living the life of an artist means living in alignment. And I can understand why that is not appealing to a lot of people because it's not easy. It's not about sitting down every day and rehearsing or writing or painting or singing or editing. It is about living at a grand scale in alignment, which our culture really doesn't encourage us to do. I mean, it actually discourages us from doing that. She says how many areas of your life that previously seemed to fit will stop fitting. This resonates with me very much. This has been happening to me for quite some time, but absolutely during the last 12 weeks, it started to really seep into everything: relationships, dating, the products I was using, the clothes I was wearing, the workouts, the food. There are a lot of things, and I'm still clearing that out, but a lot of things that were not fitting anymore as I felt myself growing. Like, even though this is nice and it's good and it might be good for someone else, it's not the ideal for me. For me to continue this, I would have to keep myself small. Doesn't that feel true for artists though too? Like, living your life as an artist means, I don't know, it means you come back to the excavating and reviewing and taking intake of your life. It's the same as what you're doing with your art, right? You could write something and then you come back to it repeatedly and you decide, does this still fit? Does this character make sense? Is this piece relevant? Of course, you're going to do that to your life as well. It's a way of thinking and reflecting that you're not going to, bam, turn off for a major aspect of your life. your actual life. She goes on to say, as we continue to excavate, we'll come to understand ourselves better. In short, your tastes and judgments and personal identity will begin to show through. As your image becomes clear, it may surprise you. The tasks for this week were really fun, and they force you to be creative with your thinking about your ideal environment, what your favorite season is, describing yourself at 80, and then writing a letter from your 80-year-old self to your current self. I loved that so much. I set that up as an email to come through in a little while. I think I gave myself like 6 months, so probably a couple more months I'll get that. So I thought that was really cute. She has you go through your closet and toss out or donate things that you believe to be a low self-worth outfit. For me, that was things I keep around because I feel like I should, or I'm attached to it only because I've had it with me for years. There's no sentimental value. It's just that I have been packing and unpacking and packing and unpacking these articles of clothing for, 10 years of my life, and I've worn them 3 times. It's time for me to give it to someone else who really likes it. I do love oh my God, what is her name? The woman who has you clear out your closet. If it doesn't spark joy, you're supposed to get rid of it. I used to love that show so much. And I very much agree with that. Like, if I don't love it, what am I doing with it? There's somebody else out there who might love it. I'll give it to them. All right, let me move through this a little more quickly so that we're not here forever. Well, week 5 is on recovering a sense of possibility. And if you haven't noticed the pattern, it's all on recovering, right? It's not about developing or creating something. She believes that this already exists inside of you. You're recovering it by removing the blocks, if that makes more sense. So what I really loved about this week is it felt very expansive and very powerful to read these words that somebody else wrote 40 years ago and published it and has had it read by millions of people. She starts with, one of the chief barriers to accepting God's generosity is our limited notion of what we are in fact able to accomplish. We unconsciously set a limit on how much God can give us or help us. And if we receive a gift beyond our imagining, we often send it back. This really made me think about my ability to receive, and that has been coming up time and time again. I mean, I do love receiving compliments and help and gifts, but I've been thinking of it like on a grander scale, like receiving goodness from the universe and how much room there is for me to expand on that. She has a quote by Ellen Caddy. Expect your every need to be met. Expect the answer to every problem. Expect abundance on every level. Expect to grow spiritually. And then she ends with, this newly positive attitude is the beginning of trust. For the tasks for this week, she encourages us to list 10 things we love and would love to do, but are not allowed to do. And without getting into my personal list, what was really fascinating is the things that you do not allow yourself to do are just wild. And what's really fun is doing this in a group of people because you get to hear things other people don't allow themselves to do. And you go, I do that every week. Like, why do they think they can't do it? Because it has to do with their own blocks. Culturally, society, how their parents were, religion, school, what have you. And then you hear things that you don't allow yourselves to do that other people, they do it without batting an eye. It's really wild. But I think it's also very freeing to do. Again, another reason why I recommend doing this with a group. Week 6 is a really nice one as well. I really liked week 6. This was on recovering a sense of abundance. And it was centered around tackling a major creative block, which is, dun dun dun, money. A lot of artists obviously have blocks around money for various reasons. And what was interesting about this week for me is she really ties in a very common limited relationship around money and this idea of being overworked and not having fun or playing. And that parallel really opened things up for me, thinking of how many artists view money as this thing they can only attain if they work really, really hard and they don't allow themselves to have fun, and then they'll be rewarded with money. So there's like this pedestalization of it, not being able to access it, seeing it as this thing that only comes through hard work and no joy, but then this thing you want. But if you really think about it, why would you want something that requires you to not have fun and not have a good time? Who the fuck wants that? Like, maybe it comes in a couple of times, but then, yeah, I think subconsciously your brain, your body is going to be like, no, thank you. If we have to drag ourselves through the mud and work like crazy and be miserable, I don't want that thing. So you have to really change your relationship with how you see money. Otherwise, yeah, you're going to block it. Week 7 was on recovering a sense of connection, and she addresses perfectionism as well and how perfection is a way that breaks connection. It is a block. She says, the success of a creative recovery hinges on our ability to move out of the head and into action. This brings us squarely to risk. Most of us are practiced at talking ourselves out of risk. I don't think there's too much to add to that, but I do think a lot of us can relate to that, this scariness of taking a risk. As blocked artists, we unrealistically expect and demand success from ourselves and recognition of that success from others. That's another quote she has. This is a tricky one. Some of these things are quotes that I highlighted or I took notes on because they stood out to me. This is a tricky one because as an artist, in order to have your art sold, whether that's tickets to a performance or someone purchasing your painting or the book you wrote, you need validation. You need that. But I'm discovering this for myself and that fine line between wanting a project to be good for others and then wanting it to be good for me. And I think what I'm finding is that the more I create and the older I get, which it's not even really the older I get because there are people we're all getting older and aging. That doesn't mean you're growing. So I'll say as I get wiser instead of older. As I get wiser, I see that we don't actually want perfection. We think we do because we tie perfection to success, but we don't really want perfection because, again, that's not fun or enjoyable. It's not fun to bang your head against the wall every time you make a tiny mistake, which mistakes can be so beautiful, and that can actually be where the art lies. They're two different things. But the more we let ourselves have fun, the more people can actually feel that enthusiasm and that joy from us. So it really all comes down to having fun, which has honestly been a major lesson for myself of 2026. I don't know why I'm yelling at you. All right, so now we're in the last, is it third? I can't really count, about. Week 8 is on recovering a sense of strength. And yeah, to be honest, I didn't really highlight or take many notes for this chapter. That doesn't say anything about the chapter, obviously. I just don't think it really resonated for me. This one was on another major creative block, which is time. The piece I identify with and kind of laughed out loud was this. She says, creative people are dramatic, and we use negative drama to scare ourselves out of our creativity with this notion of wholesale and often destructive change. Fantasizing about pursuing our art full time, we fail to pursue it part time or even at all. Unfortunately, this is a sentiment that I can relate to, which is about dramatizing how horribly wrong things can go and then scaring myself out of them and then doing nothing, having this terrible habit of just letting it go. Like talking, oh my God, I just spit on the mic. Ew. Of talking myself out of it because I'm so overwhelmed and I'm just now living in this this pool of horridness that doesn't exist. It's all up here in my head, up there. She says towards the end of the chapter, when we allow ourselves to wallow in the big questions, we fail to find the small ones. And at an earlier part in the book, she talks about self-sabotage, and with a lot of these blocks that we're unblocking and uncovering, she comes back to self-sabotage before the book, and she, refers to earlier concepts. So also important that you're kind of taking notes as you go along. And self-sabotage is very tricky because if you're not reflective, self-sabotage can conceal and mask itself as something that seems helpful. It can keep you thinking that you're staying safe when really the safety is just comfortable, because it has you going to step 10. Like, okay, well, all of this is going to happen. And then if I'm painting all of these paintings, I'm not going to have space, and I'm going to have to buy a studio space, and I can't afford that. Meanwhile, you haven't sat down to paint your first painting. It's so funny. I mean, I've also done with that with auditions. Like years and years ago, I remember I went through a period of time where I was auditioning for a lot of Lifetime movies. And those would shoot, there wasn't that much time ahead before you would be on set. And those would shoot for like 3 to 4 weeks. And I remember being like, oh my God, who's going to watch the cat? All these things. And like my day job, I guess I'll have to quit that. Like I was jumping like 15 steps before I even read through the sides for the audition. Like that's a great way to self-sabotage, right? And then you go into that audition, or at least in my case, I was going into that audition with some anxiety and holding back because there was a piece of me that was like, I don't know about this because this is going to kind of be a pain in the ass. It's just so wild. You're going in and carrying this energy from shit that you completely created in your head. Oh my God, we are fascinating. I know I wrote on one of my pretend lives I'd want to be a psychologist, but I don't know if I'd want to do that. Okay, she says, your desire, oh no, she doesn't say this, somebody else does, Dr. Joseph Murphy. Your desire is your prayer. Picture the fulfillment of your desire now and feel its reality, and you'll experience the joy of the answered prayer. This was not necessarily related to the last concept, but I highlighted it, and it's something that I've looked back on a bit because I really like it. So if you needed to hear this, I hope it finds you as well. In this chapter, she also gives a list of affirmations, and then you get to select a few, which I thought was really beautiful. There are some very sweet ones. Okay, so we have one quarter left of this book. Week 9 is on recovering a sense of compassion, and I highlighted the ever-loving shit out of this chapter. And if that says anything about my historical lack of self-compassion, I don't know what does. She starts hard. Blocked artists are not lazy. They are blocked. The blocked artist typically expands a great deal of energy on self-hatred, on regret, on grief, and on jealousy. The blocked artist spent energy on self-doubt. The blocked artist does not know how to begin with baby steps. Instead, the blocked artist thinks in terms of great, big, scary, impossible tasks. I felt very called out by this chapter, but it was things that I needed to hear, so that's fine. It was, a nice, I thought it brought the other 2 chapters together pretty nicely. All of like the learning and the doing and the knowing that was coming to me. And it was a nice reminder to attaching ourselves to doing the work. What I mean by that, maybe that's not a great way of explaining that, but I mean attaching yourself more to the process rather than the end goal. But then she also says there's a fine line between that, because as artists, grounding our self-image in what she calls military discipline is dangerous, because that's maybe not necessarily for us and doesn't give us the freedom that we need. A line in here that gave me a little bit of anxiety and was something I really had to work through in the tasks and in the morning pages was at the very end. She talks about blasting through all of these blocks we have. In order to work freely on a project, an artist must be at least functionally free of resentment, which is anger, and resistance or fear. Any buried barriers must be aired before the work can proceed. This goes back to how I defined living as an artist as living in alignment, which means clearing out your shit. And it is not easy. Living an aligned life allows you to live an open, artistic life without carrying your garbage with you. But that doesn't make it easy. It requires you to make some hard choices and do some hard things. Hard, but good. Listen to Glennon Doyle's podcast, We Can Do Hard Things. They can help you out with that. But I understand why many people are attracted to the arts, but not as a career or as a lifestyle, because that way of being is not for everyone. All right. Week 10, we're almost done, is on recovering a sense of self-protection. This was a shorter week in terms of the reading, but I thought it was effective, at least for me. She dives into the ways that we avoid doing the work through like drinking, drugs, food, sex, work. She has an entire page and a half called the workaholism quiz. And right when I saw it, I was actually going to skip it because I didn't think it applied. But yeah, I identified with way more than I thought I anticipated. She says, play can make a workaholic very nervous. Fun is scary. Fun leads to creativity. Fun leads to rebellion. It almost sounded like a threat too, the way I read it that way. I don't know why I did that. It can lead to feeling our own power. Again, that power. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. I've been prioritizing play a lot in my life. Like I said, I think fun and enjoyment has been really like the words of the year for me. So a lot of this resonated. She goes into talk about creative droughts and the times when our work can feel like it's mechanical or like we're just moving through the motions and we're lacking passion and connection to the work. She actually believes that a creative drought is a period of doubt. Creative drought equals creative doubt, and that we have just fallen too deeply into the self-doubt. And because of that, we are fighting with God and our faith, and we've lost our belief in something larger. And because of that, we have lost our faith in the work. She very much believes that this connection to something larger than you is also the connection to your work, and I agree with her. Moving on, week 11 is on recovering a sense of autonomy. This week did not really resonate very much with me. I didn't really highlight very much. Let's see. She says, I wrote this down. The function of the creative artist consists of making laws, not in following laws already made. Ferruccio Bassoni. No idea who that is, but I love that and fully agree. I highlighted it and I underlined it in red pen. So I really liked that. For me, a challenge that I've had is, going to Catholic school and growing up with more structure and sort of this like fear issue with authority because they're telling you what you need to do and you need this approval from them and you have to listen, all of these rules. But then my own personality, which I would say is not someone who follows the pack or who does the thing just because we're supposed to. I wouldn't identify with that at all. I would say that's polar to my personality. But I've experienced a lot of fear in pushing against the grain. And I don't think that I'm alone in that. I think that's pretty common for artists when the vast majority of society is following a path. You want to be a dentist? These are the steps. You want to study law and open a law firm? These are the steps. They might be challenging, but there's a blueprint for you. When you're an artist, there really isn't a blueprint. You can ask 20 different artists and every single one will have a different path to how they've reached artistic success or, whatever that means to you, and how they've been able to live and work as an artist. They will all have a different answer. Chapter 12 was okay. Oh, I remember when I started reading chapter 12, which is only like 2 weeks ago, I turned the page and I saw what it was titled and I thought, I felt relieved, like she understands how we're going to feel at this time, because it was on recovering a sense of faith. And that felt very timely for this being the end. You're about to leave, you're about to end, have faith in yourself. She starts with a quote, "Adventures don't begin until you get into the forest. That first step is an act of faith." Mickey Hart, the Grateful Dead drummer. I don't know that she wrote that in there. I'm not going to act like I know. I love this so much. I love this. I love this. I love this. I believe this wholeheartedly, and I've seen this in my own life. But I've also struggled a lot with that first step, with taking that first step of faith. Faith requires that we relinquish control and that we have trust in ourselves and in something greater than us. Our resistance to our creativity is also a form of self-destruction and self-sabotage. The truth is, we do know, and we know that we know. That's a quote from her. The truth is, we do know, and we know that we know. I love that. I feel like that gives me the power to not pretend like I don't know and to let go of all the noise. There's a lot of noise out there. So when I was looking at this chapter too, of all the things I highlighted, if I allowed my eyes to glaze over a little bit and look at all the highlights and the notes without like specifically reading all of the words and all of the lines and the quotes, the things that stood out to me were trust, darkness, creative, surrender, control, trust, opening, doors, dreams. I just want to say that again in that order too. Trust, darkness, creative, surrender, control, trust, opening, doors, dreams. You have to keep trusting. It's not about trusting once and then letting go and moving on. It's choosing to trust again and again and again, and it is a choice. And I think a lot of times we look at other people and we can say, oh, well, they have that trust in themselves. I don't. Yeah, they developed it. Maybe they grew up with, different parents or in a creative household that made it easier for them. But at the beginning, you might have to choose to trust and trick yourself into believing it until you actually start to build that trust, right? It's like starting anything new. At first, you're not sure, and then you go through the motions and you build that trust in it. It's the same with ourselves. The most beautiful thing we can experience is the mysterious. Albert freaking Einstein. The rules for one thing are the rules for everything. They're just the rules for life. So if you had a coach in high school who, high school soccer, who gave you some mindset tips or whatever, some encouragement to hold on to, that can relate to all of life. It's the piece of the puzzle is basically all the same thing, right? You might think you have a million problems going on, but when you go through this book, you'll realize that you come back to a couple of blocks again and again and again. So now for some opinions. Let me start with the things that I appreciated the most. First of all, I really enjoyed that this book was 12 weeks long. Yes, it's long, but I did not want to do something that was, a mad dash of 21 days. I liked the fact that I had time and that because it was in 1 week increments, I had the week to do all of my tasks. I didn't have to do things every single day besides the morning pages if I didn't want to or if I had some busy days. It gave me a little bit of leeway. I enjoyed the artist date more than anything, and that's something I'd like to continue with. I realized a few weeks through the book that I have at least 2 to 3 artist days a week. It could be going to a museum or seeing an improv show or listening to music, or maybe it's just doing something artsy at home. But I do live a life filled with a lot of art, and it made me really, really happy to realize that. What I also liked about the artist date, though, is doing things on your own, because I tend to do a lot of things with people, and there is obviously value in doing things on your own and having your own perspective, going out, maybe meeting some new people. I love that this book has such a large community and that there are so many people who have done it, or there are so many people who have heard of the book, or they've heard of at least the phrase morning pages. I met so many people over the last 3 months who were like, wait, I've heard of morning pages. Where have I heard that from? And I was like, oh, from The Artist's Way. I love the deep dives into the blocks we have as artists, because I think sometimes we might feel that something is specific to us, and then getting to see that it's shared amongst a grander scale. I mean, that is a little sad, but it's obviously very nice to not be alone. I love how much she encourages us to lean into trust and to let go. And I also really love the encouragement of letting go of perfection. Clearly these are things that I have struggled with, and so that's why those things specifically stood out to me. I also enjoyed a lot of the tasks. Some of them were really fun. I loved the one of writing, from your 80-year-old self to your current self. I thought that was so sweet. And I really enjoyed the tasks about writing about our dream life or alternative lives we could be living. So this wouldn't be honest if I didn't share a couple of things I didn't like either, or I wouldn't continue in the future. So again, this is specific to me. I would also imagine that a lot of people do not feel this way. And if you're someone who has not done the artist's way, please don't take this to mean that you'll feel the same way and that you'll have the exact same experience. I hope that you do have a lot to gain from this episode and you felt like it was helpful and you find it to be interesting. But I would be really sad if someone listened to this and it stopped them from doing it. You have to go through this book and have the experience for yourself. And I would absolutely recommend anyone do that. Okay, that was my prelude. So I personally did not love the morning pages. I know. I love to journal and I love to write. I love to reflect, but I prefer to wake up and move my body right away. And I can sometimes use that time to talk out loud. If I go for a nice little morning walk, I can share stuff that's on my mind. But I prefer to write at night before I go to bed. It feels like a brain dump and an opportunity for me to reflect on my day. And there's also something nostalgic about that for me. Like when I was little and I would write in my diary before I went to sleep. I also like getting to write slower. Because this was 3 pages, it takes quite a bit of time. I like getting to write slower and more legible and just share like the important things. This book is a lot of work. You need to create extra time, not only every day for the morning pages, but throughout the week for the tasks and the artist date. And as I mentioned, I love the artist date, but that is something that you just have to make time for. I found some of the affirmations in the artist prayer to be difficult for me to connect with. I don't know if it was the phrasing or word choice or sort of like an outdated, older way of wording things, or I don't know, maybe I'll gain more from it when I do this again. I imagine that I will do this again in my life, although not for like a while, like maybe like 10 years or so. But that was something for me that I felt like I was just going through the motions with instead of deeply connecting with. A big takeaway for me from this book was I think this is unintentional. It was not necessarily related to the work, but a big takeaway is that whatever you believe you need to do in order to be successful, that's exactly what you'll need to do. Julia Cameron believes that the morning pages will unblock you. She believes they will clear you and allow you to get to a deeper, clearer channel that allows your creative gifts to flow in from the universe. I, Jessie, do not believe that. I do not believe that I have to do morning pages in order to achieve that. Does that mean the morning pages don't have benefit? No, they're very beneficial. And I understand why so many people gain a lot from them. I was able to, through my morning pages, see a couple of things that I was frustrated by. There were some relationships with people of things coming up that I had to deal with. And I realized I'm writing about this again and again because it's misaligned. Like it did reveal things for me, absolutely. But they don't resonate with me in the same way in terms of achieving my artistic goals. And I do not believe I need to do them in order to be unblocked. I obviously was very impacted by this book overall, though. I launched my podcast about 3 weeks into it. I came back to a writing project I'd been working on, and I got new headshots. I was also working on some other creative stuff at the same time. I don't know how I do all these things, but I do. So clearly, even if consciously there were days or weeks where I didn't feel like I was gaining so much, I was, because I don't believe things are coincidental. And of course, it can be in co-creation with something else, but it's not random that I started this and then weeks later finally launched my podcast that I've been wanting to do for literally years. So that alone, I have a lot to thank from this book. As someone who has let perfectionism stop me a lot in the past, honestly, so many times that it actually makes me really sad to think about. This book really resonated with me. The focus and the highlight on perfectionism. I really, really needed to hear a lot of these things. It helped me to not feel alone in that process, and it also propelled me to want to take action and move past those perfectionist tendencies. Honestly, I really just got sick of myself, and there is something about those morning pages too of writing the same things again and again where you are just fucking sick of yourself, like truly, and you just need to move past it. That's a beautiful thing. I mean, it's one thing to read something and feel like it understands you, and it's another for it to push you to take action. So, yes, kudos to Morning Pages for that. So, should you do the artist's way? 100%. I think that anyone and everyone would have something to gain from the artist's way as long as you're committed to, making your way through it. That's, this is my perspective and my takeaways. And if you were to ask anyone else who was in my group that I hosted, I'm sure they would have very different takeaways and different things that they highlighted and different chapters that really resonated with them. We all have a different set of challenges and a different set of strengths, and we're working through all these things at the same time. So if you do decide to do the artist's way, which obviously I think you should, here are a couple of things that I would recommend that I think would really be helpful in setting you up for success. The first thing I would say is to do this in a group. Truly, it is absolutely worth it to get a group of people together, even if that means you don't start exactly when you want. I would highly, highly, highly recommend doing that in person. That might be just me. I like to get away from Zoom things as much as possible. But if you're more remote or you don't have an artistic community or you're traveling a lot, then at the very minimum, do this in a group online. I wouldn't do this book yourself, especially the first time around. Besides the accountability of following through, there are endless benefits to having a support system while you go through it and people to bounce ideas and anxieties off of and see the things you're working through. Number 2, I would recommend purchasing the book in a paper hardcover form. I wouldn't recommend getting it from the library. I'm a huge library fan, believe me. But I think when you get a library book taken out, it's for 3 weeks, and this is a 12-week book, so that would be too stressful. There's also just so much to highlight in here, and you can write in the book, which I really enjoy doing. You should also get a notebook, 8.5 by 11. That's what's recommended for her. I kept them on my bedside table or on my counter while I was making coffee. So I made it really easy. Make my cup of coffee, or maybe I was doing cacao like I did this morning, and then grabbing my book and writing. Number 3, try and read most of the chapter by the first day of that week. There are a lot of tasks and a lot of information coming your way, and you will really help yourself out if you give yourself the entire week to go through the tasks, maybe to work out some things in the morning pages or to reflect and let things marinate rather than trying to jam them in at the last minute. And you also gain a lot more from giving yourself 7 days to reflect on those new ideas before you move on to new concepts. Number 4, do not wait until the last day to figure out what to do for your artist date. The day you start each week, which for us it was on Monday, which meant on Sunday, the day before, I pulled up my phone, pulled up my calendar, and I scheduled on the books what my artist dates were. And like I said, I'm single, I have no children, so it's easier for me. But if you're someone with a family, with kids, multiple obligations, then absolutely you should do that. It'll make your life so much easier and give yourself the space to find things you actually like rather than like running off to some, shitty musical you don't want to see just because you're stressed about having to get your artist date in. You don't want to grow resentment from it either. You want to enjoy it. We want to have fun. Remember, it's about having fun. It's about having fun, God damn it. The last thing I would say is to give yourself some grace. You're probably going to miss some days with the morning pages or at least run low on time, now and then. You might not fully get through the tasks one week. You might lose your book for 5 days and then realize it was in the exact space you left it next to the treadmill, and then you only have 1 day to get through all the tasks that you really probably needed more time for. Obviously, I'm talking about a personal experience. So overall, just have fun with it. I went into it with a goal, which was that I wanted to launch my podcast, and I did, which is lovely. I also wanted to allow myself to really feel like an artist. And it feels pretty awesome to be able to say both of those things with ultimate confidence. So find a group, schedule the time, and get to it. Thanks for listening to Caught Off Guard. If you connected with this episode, or even if you didn't, please subscribe and leave a review, but only a nice one. It'll really help more people find the show. You can find us on Instagram at Caught Off Guard Pod. See you next time.